we've collected 4 forms for public participation. Okay. All right, let's get started. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's Thursday, October 28th. Mrs. Hatfield, could you please call the roll?
Mr. King?
Present.
Mrs. Patrick?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Here.
And Dr. Weiss?
Here.
Thank you.
Now, please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. They moved the flag. It's our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. We do not have any changes to the agenda, so I need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick? Were you the second?
Lakeisha,
Oh,
that's
it was Dr. Weiss, excuse me. Dr. Weiss?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
And Mrs. Fiesel?
Yes.
Thank you.
And tonight, we are going to be presenting the awards for the National Merit semifinalists and commended students. So Mr. Rafe and I are going to move over here, and when the students' names are called, they're going to come up and do pictures. Keep going.
All ready? Good to go? All righty. Good evening. Tonight we salute Olentangy students who are outstanding scholars and achieved recognition in the 2022 National Merit Scholarship Program. A total of 60 students from Olentangy's 4 high schools earned a commended or semifinalist status as a result of their performance on the 2021 preliminary SAT National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. 35 Olentangy students had qualified as commended scholars for the 2022 National Merit Scholarship Program. Most of them are here this evening. These students are among approximately 1.6 million high school students across the country who entered the program by taking the preliminary SAT, National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. These students placed among the top 50,000 highest scores. Although commended students do not continue in the competition for National Merit Scholarships, many of these students become candidates for special scholarships sponsored by corporations and businesses.
Congratulations to our commended students. As your name is called, please come up to the front to accept your plaque and proceed across the stage to have your picture taken with Superintendent Mark Rafe and Board President Julie Wagner-Fiesel. From Olentangy Berlin High School, Elise Brown. Calvin Davies. Lauren Eagleston. Shiv Kumar. Matthew Rowe. Noah Walls. Simon Zimmerman. From Olentangy Liberty High School, Nakila Ashanta. Kate Hagemeyer. Sathik Jaime. Jessica Mio. Puna Mula. From Olentangy High School, Rushi Bott. Trevor Gayard. Ethan Gibbs. Min Song Kim. Pranav Krishnamurthy. Nathan Patton. Dakshin Pasakni. Okay. Abhishek Sangu. Allison Tate. From Olentangy Orange High School, Daniel Acock. Kirti Chihopra. Harish Mokhapoti. In addition, 25 Olentangy students have qualified as semifinalists. These academically talented high school seniors have an opportunity to continue in the competition from some 7,500 National Merit Scholarships worth nearly $30 million that will be offered next spring. Those Olentangy students named 2022 National Merit Scholarship semifinalists here with us tonight are from Olentangy Berlin High School, Aiden Jensen. Hugh Peterson. Eden Quinn. From Olentangy Liberty High School, Kyle Berkey. Jolie Chen. Anvanthi Enki. Frauen Lewis. Sukir Malva. Sanjay Sairam. Lars Sindal Decker. Logan Ward. From Olentangy High School, Alex Oberishan. Ren Pampalya. Pranarth Rajesh. From Olentangy Orange High School, Nikita Bimreddy. Tia Chuhad. Corinne Hazel. Rushil Lincolnshetty. Elliot Lohman. Ian McGill. Sakit Pochirachi. Mauli Sanjita. Quinn Shannon. Congratulations to these outstanding students, their families, and teachers. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to continue with the meeting, but if you have other things to do, we understand. So congratulations and thanks for coming. Waiting for my signal. Okay, we're good to go. We're good to get back on our agenda. And it's the board president's report, and I just want to say congratulations to all the students that we recognize tonight. I mean, this is what we do is for these students. And tonight I'm wearing a piece of jewelry that my daughter made for me back when she was at Oak Creek, and I oftentimes will wear pieces of jewelry to the meetings, whether it's a bracelet or I have a couple pins that I wear to remind me of my daughters, because they went to school here and got a great education, and all the decisions that we make here sitting at this table are made for the students. We want the students to have the same education coming here that they had, that the students had back when my children went here. And we've had a lot of opportunities here at Olentangy, and the decisions that we make are always focused on the students. At this meeting, we're going to be going over the 5-year financial forecast, and I know that people get sick of hearing about finances, but that is a very important piece of our job. And you're going to hear some information that is good, and I think it can stay good if we continue to advocate on behalf of our district at the State House. But I just want to take the opportunity to point out that the students here have a great education, and it's our duty and our plans to keep it that way. And so I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and we will get on with the rest of our agenda. So, Mr. Rafe, what do you have for us tonight?
Well, good evening, and good evening, everyone. Thank you. For those of you that stuck around after the Exodus, and I'll echo your sentiment, Mrs. Fiesel, about those National Merit Scholars. They're just simply brilliant. That one is our curriculum doesn't, the testing of the SAT and the PSAT and those kind of things. That's not one of those tests that we really focus on. So I really do. That's an award more about genetics, than anything. So we don't. It's just a great accomplishment, though, because you talk about the top 0.5% of 1.6 million test takers. That's simply amazing. So congratulations again to all of them and their families. So, I'd like to start out with a bunch of good things here going on in the district. Katie Silcott, who is a teacher at Shanahan Middle School, was nominated by some of her students for the Grammy Music Educator of the Year Award, and she is one of 25 semifinalists nationally. The top 10 finalists will be announced here in December, but she just does a phenomenal job of teaching the choir at Shanahan, and even more importantly, just spreading incredible positivity all throughout Shanahan Middle School. So we're very, very proud of Katie Silcott. We finished our town hall meetings. I like to get off slides that have my picture on them as fast as possible. But Emily and I spent the last 4 weeks doing town hall meetings throughout the month of October. We gave a brief presentation, about 35-minute presentation, and then had the opportunity to answer questions on various topics that were presented. I feel really, really good. I'm really appreciative of the people that came out and the questions we got asked. And again, it gives us great guidance as we continue to move forward. I want to give a shout out to the Oasis program. Their students and staff made customized Halloween cards that they delivered down at Nationwide Children's Hospital, and that was very, very, very kind and very well received by those students. Liberty Tree Elementary School, which does an incredible amount of community service, and they have a fabulous service club they call their Roots Ambassador, the Liberty Tree Roots Ambassadors. They collected donations through their partnership with United Way from the community and set up a costume drive, and then they took those costumes out and had children pick out their perfect costume. So we're very appreciative of Liberty Tree Elementary School and their Roots Ambassadors. So we sent out parent feedback survey, which was just another channel, another opportunity to get feedback from our parents. We posted it on our district website. We included it in 2 district newsletters, and a targeted parent email message was sent asking for participation in the survey. We had 3,300 responses. out of the 43,300 those are custodial parents in our system, the parents that are identified as custodial parents. So that was 7% of our population. We'd like to see the results be a little bit higher. There was simple answers that we're looking for with regards to feedback, simple checkbox questions, and then also extended responses that were asked. Every response that came in was read. The parents, elementary parents were the highest percentage surveyed, then there was pretty much an even split there between middle school and high school parents. So to highlight a couple of the questions that were asked, what strategic plan goals would you like to focus on this school year? These are the top 4 goals that were selected. At 18.51, ensure mastery of learning, then alleviate barriers to learning, model fiscal responsibility, and then promote a culture of inclusive excellence. So those were the top 4 strategic plan goals that were identified. Every single strategic plan goal, though, was mentioned in the survey. And then we asked an open-ended question. So there were text questions where parents could type in answers, and I want to say again, every single response was read. The top concerns, thank you very much to our communications department, the team that did that went through and read every single response. They were, tried to put them into kind of buckets where they fit together. So our top concerns, what concerns do you have for this school year? The top concerns were obviously, I think this is not surprising, 460 responses were related to COVID related and maintaining in-person learning for students and make up any learning gaps. So those were the 460 responses related to COVID. There were 258 responses related to COVID mitigation strategies, and it was pretty much a split between pro-mask and anti-mask comments in that regard with those responses. Of the 3,300 respondents, about 2,000 completed the extended response questions. The third highest level there, classroom curriculum, focusing on learning, content quality, that remains high here in the district. Parents want us to continue to focus on learning. There was a lot of parents that spoke about the content and quality of learning in the classrooms. There were 253 responses in that area. There were 165 responses related that said basically no concerns. 159 responses about the mental and physical health and safety of our students. 54 responses about divisiveness in our community is a concern. And then 50 responses about improving communication and engagement. So again, there were, of those responses of the 2,000, those were the top. Anyone that received more than 50, we considered as the top concerns that parents had. Then other mentions under 50, but more than a dozen or so concerns. Lack of transparency in finances and mismanaged taxpayer dollars were 30, concerns of bullying 20, and transportation issues and staffing 17 comments. So, and again, I took a lot of time and effort to go through all of those survey responses. We also were looking for the preferred communication channels because, again, we want to be responsive and communicate as best in the best manner possible with our parents. So, district email and school building emails was a tie for the 2 biggest areas, and kind of the size of the box here represents the number of respondents. Text messages, phone calls, digital flyers, and then all the way down to itty-bitty other methods, which means paper communication, face discussion, teacher messages, and so on. And then another question we asked was, what are you and or your child most looking forward to this school year? And the number one theme that came to the top, 383 responses out of the 200 or so we got, were a return to normalcy and a desire to remain in the classroom with teachers 5 days a week. That is what again, the top theme, most looking forward to. Academic success had 368 responses. School activities had 250 responses. Making new friends and the social benefits of school, 176 responses. COVID mitigation strategies, which again was a split between removing mask requirement and continuing to require mask. There were 159 responses. Looking forward to graduation and senior events as we all are. School engagement and strengthening the Olentangy community, and then the mental and physical health and of our students and staff. So, and you see there were other mentions that were just again under 50 or so. So, we're going to continue to analyze that feedback and look for ways we can take that feedback to meet the needs of our parents. So I want to touch on our health and prevention guidance. As you know, Delaware Health District has adopted the new Ohio Department of Health standards. They called it Mask to Play and Mask to Stay, Text to Play as a quarantine alternative, which allows healthy students to remain in the classroom environment as long as they're wearing a face mask, self-monitoring for symptoms, and COVID testing when needed. So we're, and then, it's interesting, again, I know there's huge frustration with regards to health and prevention guidance and all of these mitigation strategies, but to be eligible for these quarantine alternatives, the exposure must be from within the school setting or in school activities, and it doesn't apply to outside activities. So if somebody is exposed outside of school, like a parent is COVID positive and now a student is exposed, these new health and prevention guidance rules don't apply. So those students would still have to quarantine. And that just doesn't make sense to me, which is, I'm sure it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. I think the new health and prevention guidance does make sense, and we're going to continue to analyze where we are with that and where the numbers are. I'm going to continue to meet with our medical advisory panel. They, at this point in time, do not recommend changing our mitigation strategies. The health commissioner does not recommend changing our mitigation strategies. So this is what the outline of the mask to stay guidance looks like. So they have to wear, in order to return to school under quarantine, if they're considered a contact, they have to wear a mask. They can remove their mask to eat or drink. They cannot participate in those essentially are things like sports, which are activities that are more prone to spread, that are high physical exertion activities. They can't otherwise break quarantine, so they shouldn't be going to dance class or club volleyball practice or whatever those other kind of things are. But again, we don't know who's monitoring any of those things, but continuing to monitor symptoms. So the only other change to that is asymptomatic cases, in order to test to continue to play if they're involved in a sport or extracurricular activity, is wearing their mask when able, and then there are testing requirements that go along with that. Obviously, this dropped late. Some districts changed quickly on that. I'm not prepared to recommend that the board change the mitigation strategies at this time or change your policy regarding masks. I'd like a little bit more time to continue to analyze our cases, see where we're going, discuss with our medical advisors and the health district before we make a change here. I think we'll be looking at more of a shorter time frames because things seem to be changing more quickly. So whereas I said at the beginning of the year we'd wait for 9 weeks before we made a change, it can happen, I think, more quickly as things continue to hopefully trend down and change here moving forward. The medical advisors, the doctors, the hospitals, the public health officials feel that 50 cases per 100,000 is kind of the threshold where they're going to change their requirements. So, I'll continue to discuss that with them about what that threshold looked like for us as we continue to move forward here, and I can give you guidance about whether or not I think I would recommend changing our policy or me implementing other mitigation strategies at this time. And finally, 2 action items to highlight. We have a retirement of a longtime Olentangy teacher who's been with the district for over 20 years, Kathy Harmon, 6th grade teacher at Liberty Middle School. Wish her well and congratulations on her retirement. As you're aware, teachers that turn in their retirement notification here before December 1 don't have to go through the extensive evaluation process in their final year. So we'll see a couple more of these here coming up in November and December. And then this is probably, as I always like to say, the saddest action item of the agenda every year. when we put on the board agenda the purchase of road salt, and it's on there because it may exceed $50,000. But Mr. Meyer and the weather team, some who are in the crowd, are ready and willing and able to be out on the roads starting at about 3:45 a.m. as bad weather will inevitably be upon us soon. A lot of fun being out on the weather team, having done it for about 15 years. Now I kind of monitor from home. Right, fellas? Right. All right, finally, important dates. We got Veterans Day coming up, and you know, obviously, as a parent of multiple children in the military, that this is some of the things that we do in our district that I'm most proud of. Orange Middle School and Hyatt's have really championed this over the years. So if you have an opportunity, I encourage you to get out and see the Orange Middle School Veteran Celebration and the Hyatt's Veteran Recognition Parade there on November 5th and 12th. Those are the two we have dates for at this time, but literally there'll be events at almost all of our buildings, but none do it better than Orange and Hyatt's. And then our next Board of Education meeting, our only meeting in November, will be November 16th.
And that is a change because Mrs. Patrick has the DACC board meeting, so. Yeah, on the 18th, so. On November, since we only have one board meeting, sometimes they clash, so we have to move that one.
Any questions? Thank you.
All right, treasurer's report, Mrs. Hatfield?
Yes, ma'am. So good evening. I'm going to stay seated to give the treasurer's report this evening. But we will be discussing the 5-year forecast, so we're looking forward to that. I just wanted to mention that, but you'll see that later on in the discussion items just after public participation. For action items this evening, we have the 4 items listed. If you would go to the next slide, please. There you go. Thank you. We have our September board financials, board meeting minutes, amended appropriations, and donations. So our September board financials, you'll notice, as most of our board financial packages are, they're quite lengthy, sometimes more than 50 pages, depending upon all the information that is included and the volume of items processed in a month. But we have added an additional general summary that is a part of that package. So to give you some of the highlights from that general summary, we have received about 48% of total revenues that we expected to. Because we have most of our revenues coming from tax collections, those have been received for in July and August, and so most of our collections are in place on those types of revenues. Our state foundation funding is broken out into a monthly funding payment. However, the Fair School Funding Plan numbers will not pick up and take into effect until December. In terms of expenditures, we are right on target, approximately 24% spent to date, which makes sense considering where we are in the fiscal year. We have our wages and benefits that are the primary expenditure in the report, which makes sense and correlates to the fact that we are a service organization, and most of our expenditures are related to benefits and personnel. But otherwise, moving right on target. And then just as a reminder, we have not received any additional ESSER 2 or ESSER 3 federal funding related to the pandemic. So any pandemic or general operating expenditures related to that are coming from the general fund at this time. Our board meeting minutes, we are now caught up, and these, once approved by the board, will be posted on the website. We appreciate your patience as we had a staffing turnover. So we had some additional training to do, but are moving in the right direction and excited to have those caught up to date. Amended appropriations are to change or post any additions to budgets that might be needed. So those are standard practice to bring those forward. And then we'd like to recognize two donations this evening from the Olentangy Liberty Athletic Boosters. One over $3,300 for additional supplemental basketball coaching, and the other just over $4,000 for supplemental ice hockey coaching. So we're very grateful to the Liberty Athletic Boosters for those donations to Liberty High School. And we also want to take the time to say thank you to our community members who donate their time and efforts to our schools and our students, as we know that those donations often are not recognized, but they are noticed, and our students really appreciate it as well. So thank you for those as well. And with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Any questions? Nope. Okay.
Thank you.
Public participation. We have 4 people have submitted public participation in the areas of communications, board construction, and other. And so first, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So go ahead and name the first person to come up, and we have the podium in the middle.
Absolutely. Just as a reminder, we had a change to the public participation policy at our last board meeting. Each participant has a limit of 3 minutes to address the Board of Education for a maximum participation of 30 minutes in total. Participants are not able to exceed their 3 minutes, and we ask that each participant state their name and address for the record once they are at the podium. Once at the podium, I will start the timer for the 3 minutes. May I please have Shelia Schick please join us up front? Did I pronounce your last name correctly? Yes. Thank you.
Hi, Sheila.
I'm Shelia Schick. I'm at 953 Ballater Drive. I was asked to speak tonight by a self-described longtime supporter of the district. She requested I speak about something positive because, and I'm quoting, the negative speakers have gotten to be a bit much. What I'm going to say tonight probably isn't what she had in mind. I'm not going to be negative, but I'm not going to fall in line. I'm here to tell you that what is being construed as negativity is frustration and a lack of meaningful communication. Asking for accountability isn't negative. Whether you like the message or not, these parents deserve to be heard. To ignore the issue would be irresponsible, and it tarnishes the cooperative relationship Olentangy and the community has enjoyed. To the superintendent and school board officials, you are in positions of leadership. Being a strong leader requires courage and a commitment to communication. Living up to your commitment is important, even more so during turbulent times. Sending emails out at 4 p.m. on a Friday on a controversial subject isn't courage. Having staff count the number of masked and unmasked kids to report back is not courage. Flip-flopping on the mask decision after you tested parents to see if they did what you wanted is not courage. Going along with recommendations which only consider a single facet of a child's overall health isn't courage. Setting policies for community participation that do not allow for two-way dialogue isn't courage. Our children in our district deserve strong leaders. Strong leaders don't blindly follow recommendations because everyone else is doing it. They don't avoid confrontation. They provide sound reasoning for their decision-making. They take risks and they're not afraid to walk alone. You have 18 months of data that you can use to accurately assess risk if you wanted to. Data that is specific to kids, not skewed by the entire population. You could lead with the strategy for Olentangy to best serve our students' physical, mental, and emotional well-being, but you haven't. For whatever reason, you've chosen to follow the status quo and don't want to lead. So what's the end game? Is it 100% COVID-free? Right now, we're 99.82%, and that's not good enough. If you apply the same logic you're using with COVID to other activities, our kids would never ride their bikes, get in a car, ride the school bus, never swim. All of those things are more dangerous to them than COVID. I emailed Mr. Rafe before school and I thanked him for his leadership. He thanked me. I replied to him and I asked him after he reversed his decision to help me understand what caused the abrupt change. I got no response. I emailed each of you. I got no response. Olentangy didn't get to be one of the best districts in the area by accident. They got there with bold leadership and not following the status quo. This is no time to be followers. Be leaders that our kids need and deserve, please.
May I have Dr. Megan, I believe it's Rail, Am I pronouncing that correctly? I'm so sorry. Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Dr. Megan Rail, 4935 State Route 37 East. Esteemed members of the board, thank you all so much for your intellectual and really your moral courage over the last 18 months to ensure the health and safety of Olentangy children. It is in that same spirit of your dedication to health and safety that I'm here tonight to request the board be consistent with that prioritization and immediately cease your contract with TowerCo for the construction of an almost 200-foot-high wireless cell tower located on the new middle school property just across the way. Importantly, you should know that your surrounding neighbors, including the owners of Cather Farms who sold you the land, have strongly objected to the construction of the cell tower. Also, the Berlin Township trustees held a special meeting on this topic and both individually and collectively objected to its construction. And respected members of the board, I'm confident that once you review the reputable and peer-reviewed facts showcasing the inconclusive evidence at best regarding the safety of long-term and close-range radiation emissions, you will be compelled to take such action as well. Outside of the fact that the middle school will be dangerously located within the fall zone of the tower, it's well documented that emissions over a long period of time, such as what some of these children will have and teachers will have in the area, with elementary, then middle, then high school, yield concerning data related to health troubles such as malignant brain tumors, cancer, and male infertility. Also, such results have caused cities in countries all around the world to ban the construction of wireless cell towers near schools. I'll provide you with all these references, but I'd like to offer 2 common points of misinformation with brief rebuttal for your urgent consideration. The first point, Wi-Fi routers in classrooms emit more radiation than cell towers. Response, that is categorically false. Wi-Fi devices operate on power levels far lower than cell towers or smartphones. Second point, well, there's no proof that the cell towers are unsafe. Response, there's also no proof that the cell towers are safe. But the evidence available to us tonight is crystal clear. The American Cancer Society has made explicit more research needs conducted on the long-term safety effects. WHO has classified the emissions as possible carcinogens. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has established causal correlation to types of cancers, and there is a recent lawsuit won by the Children's Defense Fund and other plaintiffs in August of this year against the FCC related to this specific issue. These data are concerning. In closing, I offer that in the spirit of being consistent with ensuring the health and safety of children, I ask the board this evening to please be good neighbors to those in Berlin Township and act with the intellectual and moral courage to stop the construction of the cell tower on this parcel. Once we know better, we're obliged to do better. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
May I please have Marcy Freed join us at the podium?
Okay, I can take this off, right? Marcy Freed, I'm at 700 Home Road. I'm going to start my own timer, but you can help me too. I'm a mom of 2 kids in the district. I have a senior and a freshman, both lifers. They've been here since kindergarten and first grade. And as a senior mom, I have started reflecting upon my senior's experience, and I thought it was a good time to come in and thank you all. I was recently talking to my son about his future and his career. He wants to major in business, and he told me that one of his guiding values is to make people's lives better, and I want to thank you for that. Not only has he received a top-notch education, but he's also been surrounded by people who model that in his life every day, people who really do want to make other people's lives better. My youngest son, he's a freshman. He was diagnosed with a rare degenerative disease in 2nd grade. So in 2nd grade, he was still able to walk. And this freshman year, he rolled in his wheelchair to high school. But what I felt so good about was that he rolled in with the support and the care that he needed. Before school started, he was able to establish a bit of a relationship with the principal at the school, who he has come to really adore and trust. He feels completely comfortable going to the principal about anything that he needs. And at a time when all you want to do is not stand out in a crowd, he somehow feels comfortable enough to roll in every day and ask for the help he needs. And along this journey of helping my son, I have talked to several people in the district. I've talked to Mr. Rafe, I've talked to administrators, I've talked to teachers, I've talked to physical therapists, occupational therapists, I've talked to
1 minute, please.
aides, I've talked to intervention specialists, and I've talked to Marty, who's our high school maintenance guy and possibly one of Grayson's favorites. And this is what I found. We are not a perfect district, but I have approached you with phone calls and emails and meetings, and I have been met with professionals who care deeply about my child. I have been met with people who are willing to help find solutions, and I have been met with people who, even at times when we don't agree, will sit at the table with me until we find a way to come to a solution together. And through this, I have had the wonderful experience of being able to become a team with my sons, both of my sons, educators, administrators, and everything in between. And what I want you all to know, and I want all the teachers in the district to know, is that you do make a difference in children's lives every day, and thank you so much.
Thank you. May I have Karen McGreevy, please?
Karen McGreevy, 5389 Bayside Ridge Court, Galena, Ohio, 43021. Is Mr. Spinner here? So before I say my remarks, I have to share a story. This morning I was watching the news, and this is true story. An elementary school in California had to go on lockdown this morning because there was a mama bear in the vicinity. And they think that the mama bear was looking for her cub. And so they did have to tranquilize her and make sure that she got back safely and reunite her with her cub. But the kids had to go on lockdown because of Mama Bear. So I want you to know, Mr. Spinner and the board, that I am here. You don't have to tranquilize me. I am a Mama Bear who loves my kids, but I love this district because you guys have been an incredible life net for my kids and for me and my husband. 6 years ago, my family of 5, Mike, Liam, Katie, Maggie, and me, we left our home in Ithaca, New York, a small, wonderful, idyllic college town where Cornell University and Ithaca College are located in the Finger Lakes region of New York State. And we came to Columbus, Ohio. And we landed here in Olentangy Local School District, in Galena, in Harbor Point neighborhood. And tonight I want to publicly express my gratitude for all of you who have helped my kids transition and thrive, truly thrive here in the Olentangy Local Schools. Sorry. Before we moved here, I was actually serving as a school board member for the Lansing Central School District, home of the Bobcats, and home to only 1,200 total students. Yes, it was a public school system in New York State, and we had 1 elementary school, 1 middle school, 1 high school, and my son moved here to start at Berkshire, and Berkshire was bigger than our entire school district. So you might imagine, and we lived an hour and 15 minutes from an interstate. So you might imagine it was a shock to our system to move from Ithaca, New York to Columbus, Ohio. But we've moved to the heartland, and I love this place because I've discovered that people that live here have a real heart for kids, a heart for farms, a heart for family, a heart for faith, and a heart to just give back and do good in the world and in Ohio and right here in Olentangy Local School District. So here I am. I started here with Maggie as a 3rd grader at Johnny Cake, Katie as a 5th grader, and Liam as a 7th grader at Berkshire. And now I can say that Liam just successfully graduated from Berlin in 2021, and he's now a freshman at Ohio State in the Fisher College of Business. Katie is a junior here, and Maggie is a freshman. So I've arrived. We have gotten through middle school. So what difference can I now make for Olentangy Local Schools? Well,
I
I want to let
apologize,
you know
but
that I want to
fine.
be involved. I want to be engaged, and I want to support you, our school board members. I cannot thank you enough. Was that my ending? Oh,
Yes,
sorry.
I'm
I just
sorry.
want to
That
say
was your time.
thank you, and I'm going to join your advocacy committee for fair funding. Thank you.
The first reading of our 5-year financial forecast. Mrs. Hatfield, are you going to use the podium?
Yes. Sorry for the very loud shoes. All right. A little bit shorter than Mr. Rafe, so I think we're good to go now. Thank you so much for staying and listening to our presentation on the 5-year forecast. We are bringing forward this presentation based on the draft of the forecast. It has been approved, or it has been put together, and we have met with our Finance and Audit Committee on the 18th, I believe it was, to discuss the components of the 5-year forecast and talk about metrics and assumptions made within the forecast to help ensure that we are doing the best that we can with all of the information available to us. So the purpose, objectives, and methodologies are before you for the community to understand where we are coming from, what regulations we have in terms of the 5-year forecast, and really just to reiterate that the 5-year forecast is based on trend analysis and estimations. We do have 3 years of actual data that we are including to help set those trends and analyses. But we are working on the first year of fiscal year 2022, which we are currently in, and projecting out to fiscal year 2026. What you see before you are the major lines of emphasis within the 5-year forecast. We have total revenue, total expenditure, revenues versus expenditures, unreserved fund balance, and days cash on hand. So our overall revenues for the for fiscal year 2022, again, are more than anticipated. Let me get to that slide. I'll show you where we're at. Are more than anticipated mainly due to our fair school funding that is coming from the state. Previously, the projections we had in May had a slight inflationary increase to state funding, but we really held it flat throughout the forecast because it wasn't put into legislation yet. And in prior years, we had been reduced and or held flat in our state funding. So we really kept it conservatively low. What you can see from this chart is the effect of this fair school funding plan beginning to take place. So in the current fiscal year, we have about 16% of the total amount estimated coming into our revenue stream. And then in fiscal year 23, about 33% of the total funding coming into our revenue stream. Fiscal years 24, 5, and 6, we used just a 2% inflationary gain in that revenue until we have more information about the fair funding being put into law and it's fully funded. I left off fiscal year 26 on this slide because it shows a skewed graphic when we include it because the May forecast did not include fiscal year 2026, so it creates a big drop off that's not really representative of what's occurring. So we want to take a look at overview of our expenditures. I think the most encouraging thing about this is, can you see where May and November actually split? They're pretty much right on top of each other. We did have some relief in expenditures due to the tuition payments no longer being charged to us by the state. But we also have, excuse me, some staffing needs that we have addressed, as well as holding tight to our cleaning and other protocols for the pandemic. So those expenditures are in the general fund and kind of balance each other out. The May line is a little bit higher than November, but overall it's pretty much right on target. Again, we left off fiscal year 26 because it would skew the graphics. A major component to that, though, is to understand that that elementary 17 has been delayed in terms of cost and personnel, and also in purchase services and supplies until fiscal year 26. Our May forecast had it in FY 25, but after the enrollment projections and presentations that the facilities committee provided, the recommendation was to look out another year. So we have done that in this model. So I'm going to go back and talk about our summary a little bit more to give context to these numbers. Revenue and expenditures, why are some of them black and some of them red? We're taking a look at the total revenue collected versus the expenses that we have for the year and what's remaining. So when we approach fiscal year 24, we can see that we are spending more than we are bringing in. I think a major component of that, again, is the Fair School Funding Plan not being assumed to be fully funded. If that was fully funded, the current projection shows that we would have an increase of up to about $50 million in fiscal year 27. So that $50 million annual revenue would help offset some of those negative revenue versus expenditure lines that you see in 24 through 26. Our unreserved balance is taking a look at the cash we actually have on hand, having revenue, subtracting off our expenditures, and coming up with the cash balance that we are anticipating having at the end of each fiscal year. We add to that days cash on hand because looking at that unreserved fund balance without context can really give you a skewed point of view, not a full understanding of what that translates to for the district. So we have taken the opportunity to show how many days, based on a 365-day calendar, that we could actually operate the district. In this current fiscal year, we anticipate we'll have 155 days left of operating capital for the year, and then across to 79 days. Our implied cash balance policy that we like to use is also a best practice of having 2 to 3 months days cash on hand at the end of a fiscal year so that we can carry forward with the operations until new collections are available to us. So the good news with this projection is that we are looking at extending our 3-year levy campaign promise from 3 years from fiscal year 2020. We obviously will meet that in 2023. And with the information that we have currently available to us, it looks like we could stretch it to 2025. That recommendation would come even though we see 79 days in 2026. We're hitting that 2 to 3 month, roughly, cash balance. So I would recommend that we would have an operating levy in 25 to collect in 2026 to continue to operate in a fiscally responsible manner.
But that's if you don't get any additional.
But that's
funding.
without additional funding, yes. And so we're pretty excited to be able to share this information. The pandemic was not easy. There's been lots of challenges organizationally as well as operationally with our students and staff. Of course, we don't take that lightly, but this is another good story that we have to tell as we continue to operate in that pandemic. I want to go through, I'm going to forward a little bit back to where we were, and talk about the risk assessments. So talking about some of the risks to the forecast. What could possibly change the forecast numbers, and what do we have to really make sure that we are analyzing as we move forward? Our real estate valuations are an area that we need to continuously monitor. That's not uncommon. However, because of the pandemic and some of the changes in legislation about how entities can ask for a Board of Revisions case or a lower property value on their property, we have to monitor those cases more because they have a greater opportunity to file for that. When property valuations are decreased, our tax collection is less, which could cause our real estate revenue to come in under projections. So we're keeping an eye on that and really watching that heavily during this pandemic. We've talked about the Fair School Funding Plan quite a bit, but just as a reminder, we do anticipate that actuals will be available in December of 2021, which means we will have truer estimations or actual numbers that we can use in our May forecast update. That might create a little bit of a variance for us, but we don't anticipate a large one. But we do need to make sure that we are continuing our advocacy efforts for full implementation. Once the Ohio Department of Education releases those new financials, we'll start to drum up or be a little more vocal and active with our advocacy efforts. It's important for us to have those actuals in front of us so we can speak intelligently to what they did or didn't do, or any misinterpretations we feel might have been implemented in that law. So we'll continue to have more information about that. Look for that information at the beginning of 2022 as we get that data. And of course, enrollment growth. Enrollment growth is always an item that we consider to be a high risk. We have, of course, it directly impacts our personnel and benefits costs. We are a service organization, so the biggest component of our expenditure pieces are personnel and benefits. As our student counts grow, so too does our personnel and benefits costs. So we keep an eye on that and make sure we're tracking that on a regular basis. It also impacts our facilities needs. What do we need? When do we need it? A levy campaign, we are hoping, if we are fully funded, that our next levy campaign could potentially just be about facility needs. But we're hopeful that we can lobby that and get that into place. And then, of course, we track our ESCCO contracted services. This particular contract works with our special education employees, and so as those services or that population increases and continues to grow faster, at a faster ratio than some of our other areas, the contracted services for those staff continues to grow. So we continue to watch those counts and make sure that we are able to have the services required for those students. They serve preschool as teachers, but also our occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech therapists, etc. And so the last item, just to reiterate, our supplemental information on federal funding. While it is not notated here, I wanted to remind everyone that we had approximately $1.5 million in total federal funding through the CARES Act or for pandemic relief. About $245,000 of that was the first round of ESSER money. We had some coronavirus relief funds that were about $1 million, and then broadband connectivity that was just over $200,000. We are not eligible for any additional funds at this time. I've heard discussions that our legislators are trying to discuss the potential for the state to give some of their ESSER funds to some of the districts. There's probably, 3 of us, I think, that didn't get additional ESSER funds, but at this point, it's just conversational. 2. It's been conversational, and we don't have enough information to count on it, quite frankly. So none of that is expected or accounted for in terms of offsetting general fund expenditures. So we've kind of talked about this.
And I wanted to bring forward and just kind of reiterate where the elementary classroom need was. This is a slide from the facilities committee that they presented during the enrollment projections. Just to reiterate elementary school potential needs, because they did not recommend at that time another middle school or high school within the 10 years, other than middle school 6, which is already under construction. So this is the information we track and watch in terms of facility needs and personnel needs, and where does that take us? Are there any questions that I can answer for you?
Do we have any questions? I just want to point out that this is just our general fund. We have other funds also,
Correct.
like our food services fund is one of them, and then we have the federal fund, and I don't know what number that is off the top of my head, where federal funds go because they're for specific needs.
Correct.
And so if you want to talk about the different funds that
Sure.
you also control. But
Sure.
This is the biggest fund,
Of
but
course.
it's not all of the fund.
Of course. So this represents, if you are looking at, I think the best way to put it into context for you, if you're looking at our monthly financial package, there is a fund summary report that is included in that, and which is available to the community and to the board. And it lists each fund by type, by category. General fund, of course, is our largest. I say our second largest is our O24, or self-insured health fund that we have because we're self-insured. Our federal funds are listed in the 500s. They will vary depending upon how the Ohio Department of Education requires us to report on them. There's a 572 and so on. For some reason, Title I just stuck out in my head in terms of coding.
Yeah.
But they were all in that 500 range. The state funding that we did have for coronavirus funds were in the 400 region. One of the components, or the other component that has changed with the First School Funding Plan, is our student wellness and student well-being funding. That used to be in Fund 467. It is now part of the general fund revenue, but we are also bringing in the general fund expenditures for those services, so it doesn't really create a big swing one way or another to the overall numbers that we have in the forecast. And then, of course, food service, there's athletic funds, there's student clubs, and so on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And speaking of the food services fund, are you anticipating we'll have to do any type of transfer this year like we've had to do for food services?
At this point, I don't believe so. However, if we look at the September financials, they are about $300,000 plus negative at this time. With the free lunch and breakfast that are offered, those are offered as a federal program, and that federal program reimburses the food service costs at a higher rate than they would get if they didn't participate in that free program. So we're hopeful that they will be caught up by the end of the fiscal year. We also know that their federal funding does not post until October. And so with having actuals through September, they just haven't received that federal push to bring them into the black on their books, so to speak. We will talk about what type of potential repayment there might be from the food service fund with our May forecast update, because we'll have more actuals and can kind of get a better handle on how much revenue they have come in, how far they have made up the loss that they had the last 2 years because of the pandemic. We don't want to take their fund balance down so low that they can't continue to operate at the beginning of next fiscal year. Same concept as with the general fund, 2 to 3 months cash balance, so that they can upstart and keep running for the next fiscal year without any issues.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you.
All right. Next we have Dr. Fetty with the first reading of board policy updates. We have a stack of them.
Lots
You
of-
do. Good evening. The board's policy committee met in early October to review all of the policies that have been provided to you in advance. Most of those policies were, a great portion of those policies were driven by House Bill 110. Are there any questions or comments on any of the policies? I will be bringing them back in November for a second reading and adoption. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
They said it takes them longer to walk.
I know, it does. Okay.
All right, the treasurer action items. Mrs. Hatfield, what do you have to present to us tonight?
May I present treasurer action items A through D for approval, please?
Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Dave and Mindy, thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay, call the
Ready
roll.
for roll?
Call the roll, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Dr. Weiss?
Yes.
And Mrs. Fiesel?
Yes.
Thank you.
And now we have the superintendent action items.
Yes, ma'am, I'd like to present superintendent action items A through G for approval.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay. Call the roll, please.
Dr. Weiss?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
And Mrs. Fiesel?
Yes.
Thank you.
And now I need a motion to enter into executive session as permitted by Section 121.22G4 of the Ohio Revised Code for the purpose of preparing for conducting or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees, and as permitted by Section 121.22G1 of the Ohio Revised Code to consider the employment and compensation of public employees. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay. And we will be, call the roll, please. Sorry.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Dr. Weiss?
Yes.
And Mrs. Fiesel?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. We will be coming back into the auditorium just to adjourn. We will not be taking any actions when we return, but thank you everyone for coming tonight. And remember, the next meeting is Tuesday, November the 16th.
they do their show and they do it in the auditorium. I'll make sure you get tickets.
Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Call the roll,
Seriously?
please.
Dr. Weiss,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick,
Yes.
and Mrs. Fiesel.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.